Hi, I'm Candy Berry, and this is my persuasive speech. Damien Eccles was sentenced to the death penalty when he was just 18 years old. He, along with two other teenagers who received lesser sentences, were convicted of killing three 8-year-old boys in West Memphis, Arkansas in 1993. The town was outraged, rightfully so, at the heinous nature of the crimes, but a rush to judgment happened that caused three innocent people to be convicted. By chance, HBO had sent two documentary filmmakers, Bruce Sinofsky and Joe Berlinger, to West Memphis to cover the case. 18 years later, Damien Eccles would credit these two men with saving his life. If not for their documentary series, 3 parts that covered 1996 through 2012, titled Paradise Lost, widespread public attention would not have been brought to his case, and he could be dead. This is a picture of Damien Eccles with the two filmmakers taken in 2009. Sadly, this is not uncommon. The majority of those who are exonerated for crimes they did not commit are freed because of evidence and advocacy outside of our criminal justice system. In the SurveyMonkey results from my classmates, the majority believed in the death penalty. I was surprised by this until I read further that only 1 of the 10 who responded had heard of a particular case where an innocent person was sentenced to the death penalty. I myself used to believe that the death penalty was a good thing until I started following Damien Eccles' case in the Paradise Lost series. Today I'm going to argue why the death penalty needs to be abolished and why life without the possibility of parole is the viable alternative. I'm going to look at innocence, and I'm going to look at cost and whether or not the death penalty actually deters crime. So first, innocence. Our flawed criminal justice system allows innocent people to be sentenced to the death penalty. Per witnesstoinnocence.org, an organization that was started by those exonerated and their families, since 1973, 154 people have been released from death row with evidence of their innocence. They further point out reasons why a person could be wrongfully convicted. One is poor representation. These cases cost a lot of money that a lot of times the defendants do not have, so they get lawyers who do not have experience in arguing against the death penalty and defending them. Also, it's politics. Judges and prosecutors are elected positions, and they often feel pressure to assuage the public outcry for justice, and sometimes they don't admit when they've made a mistake because of elections. Also, according to C. Ronald Huff from the Canadian Journal of Criminology and Criminal Justice, eyewitness error and false or controversial coerced confessions can play into this. Per witnesstoinnocence.org, on average, an exonerated death row survivor spends 9.8 years behind bars. And witness, they also claim dedicated attorneys or investigations by journalists and students exonerate these people, not the appeals process. This takes time, and they also would have time to come up with funds to help defend themselves and raise money for DNA tests to fight for their freedom. Since we've looked at innocence, we're now going to look at cost. The death penalty is considerably higher in cost to pursue than a life sentence without the possibility of parole. DeathPenaltyInfo.org notes that trials and appeals make up the majority of these substantial costs. North Carolina and Texas, per this organization, spends an average cost of $2.2 million per death penalty case over the cost of life in prison, and that's measured around 40 years. And I'm going to repeat that because that is astonishing. North Carolina and Texas spend roughly $2.2 million per death penalty case, above and beyond what it would cost for someone to live in prison for 40 years of their life. Michael McLaughlin reported in the Huffington Post that from 1973 to 2004, more than 35% of death row inmates were spared from capital punishment but remained incarcerated, which means they spent the money for the death penalty cases and then commuted their sentences down to life anyway, which wasted tons of money. And can't that money be put to better use? It could hire law enforcement officers. It can fund crime prevention programs. It can make restitution and provide counseling for families of murder victims. Finally, I'm going to address the last misconception about the death penalty, and that involves whether or not it's a crime deterrent. Deathpenalty.org states that without the death penalty, the states that don't have the death penalty have lower murder rates. And also, they polled the nation's police chiefs, and they ranked the death penalty last in their priorities for effective crime reduction. Max Ehrenfreund from the Washington Post wrote that criminologists have been unable to assemble a strong case that capital punishment deters crime. He also points out the killers might not be in a state of mind to coolly evaluate whether their chances of being sentenced to the death penalty. They're more concerned with getting caught, not with what happens afterwards. So therefore, law enforcement is most important to preventing crime. In conclusion, we've shown that the justice system is flawed. The cost of prosecuting a death penalty case is exorbitant, and it doesn't really deter crime per our sources. Therefore, the death penalty needs to be abolished. We cannot ignore these issues. We cannot allow this to keep happening, and we cannot keep defending the use of the death penalty. Instead, we can punish those who murder with sentences of life without the possibility of parole, which 70% of my classmates agree that is an ample alternative for murder. This also provides protection for the innocent, as well as saving millions of dollars that can be better spent. The last thing I'll show you is a map from deathpenaltyinfo.org, which in red points out the states that still use the death penalty, ours being one of them. And until this map is completely blue, we as a society still have more work to do. Thank you.